Hi everyone, welcome to Unit Master Speaker Session number 11. We're here with Meinhard Benn. He's the CEO and founder of SatoshiPay. It's one of the leading B2B cross-border money transmittance micropayment processing services using the blockchain. Started in 2014. Meinhard has been in the crypto and Bitcoin and blockchain space since 2011. He's an independent internet developer. He's got a strong focus on open source software and co-founder of nonprofit Ecobytes, actively involved in linking environmental awareness and IT, and he'll share his insights and experience and story in the industry so far. So please put your hands together and welcome Meinhard.
Hi everyone, good to be here. This was a very last-minute invitation, so I'm glad I could make it. I pushed one meeting out of the way to be here and present to you and sort of share my story. As Michael already said, I started quite early. From a technical perspective, I always try to combine creativity and computers. And when I was 12, I started programming, and that's sort of the end or the beginning of the end of my CV. That's all I ever did. And I was never really I was never really employed. I was always self-employed. And discovered decentralized technologies quite early, torrenting and similar networks, and also had an interest in alternative currencies very early on. Played even with an early version of Ripple when it was still a centralized service I think it was 2005, around that time. And also the LETS, the local exchange trade system, like a huge monster in Java, which was quite terrible. I thought that couldn't be the solution. And my interest in open source sort of brought me also to Bitcoin. Shortly after the network went live, not shortly, like about a year or two after. And I was like looking at this, and I thought, okay, this solves many problems I see in the world, and I want to be in this scene, in this ecosystem. I want to do something here, and I installed a little mining program on my, I think it was a desktop computer, and started mining Bitcoin. It was only half a Bitcoin per day. So I was like, this doesn't really, it doesn't even cover the electricity. So I'll just stop doing this and look at other things. And yeah, so I went to Mt. Gox and started or bought a few coins there and kind of forgot about it until I was actually in Bali, like a year later or so. And then suddenly Bitcoin shot up to something like, I think, 1,000 or something. And suddenly an industry emerged, or also something that supported the startup ecosystem. VCs came in, independent investors, and also some of the early Bitcoiners supported companies to create an ecosystem there. And I was part of that not first, maybe second wave or 1.5 wave. And by joining a couple of other startups in that space, and then starting SatoshiPay in 2014. Always with that thing in mind that blockchains still to this day can do the best to transact tokens or to transact value, actual value between independent nodes or independent participants of the network. And that's really what all blockchains at the core do really, really well. And that's what we're still focusing on, simple transfers and using the network for that, with a bit of fancy coding around that. But at the essence, it's still transferring assets on a ledger that's immutable. Yeah, so that's kind of the quick summary of the story. Let me know if you want some more details on certain parts.
Amazing, and love to hear in terms of your vision for SatoshiPay, like how it got started, like what were the first things that you kind of did to get it started, what difficulties along the way, and like your vision.
Oh yeah, there was plenty, of course. I mean, this was a completely new, not even an industry, new field to work in. No one really knew anything. It kind of came out of the dark parts, according to some of the internet, where regulation wasn't really a concern, or even like a challenge to do something that's not held back, let's say, by old-fashioned thinking in some way when it comes to financial transactions. And this was really what attracted me. Okay, here's something, some real pioneering going on, and somehow something seems to emerge that's bigger than everybody can imagine right now. And we thought, like, man, in 20 years, Bitcoin might be even like at 10,000 euros or something. It's like it's unimaginable. And then this happened within 5 years or like 6 years. And this was quite staggering. The challenges or the initial vision of the company, as I said already, was the focus on making blockchain payments accessible to a broader audience, a business audience, or even consumers, through some very usable interfaces, not having to manage your private key and these kind of things, and not having to download a wallet even, just kind of use the advantages that blockchain has, specifically in micropayment, for the everyday user, right, that doesn't know anything about private keys or how financial flows work on the internet in general, doesn't need to know. So we created a very simple content payment system that just sort of comes with the website. It's a website widget, the micropayment widget that we've built, and it doesn't need any installation. You load the website, and then it loads JavaScript that manages the wallet. And I was inspired to do it this way by a software called, I think it was Rush Wallet, which was one of the first instant wallets. You went to the website, I don't know if it still exists, Rush Wallet, and it generated a private key, and you immediately had a Bitcoin wallet there without any installation. You just went to a website, you had an address where you could receive funds, pass them on to someone else. And this was really eye-opening for me, like, wow, this is pretty cool. Like with a few extra security, this could be a real nice product. So Rush Wallet was sort of the inspiration for how we approached wallets, just like kind of a throwaway wallet, or even the concept of throwaway addresses, that, you know, everything's just kind of you're not tied to one specific address for the rest of your life. You have something like a seed that makes it possible to generate as many addresses as you want, and it's free, right? Or it's almost free, not regarding the network fees when sort of joining these addresses on the Bitcoin network. So that was really fascinating. And we started offering this to publishers around the world. We built a WordPress plugin, and that was all fine. And technology was always top solid. However, the publishing world pushed, or still pushes, a different monetization model, mainly advertising, obviously, but also when it comes to alternatives to that, subscription models. So they want users to get into subscriptions. So they kind of have a regular, predictable income, and even sort of receive funds from users that don't use their services at all, or not very much. So it's, you know, the fitness center model, the usual, you know, people pay their fees or their membership fees, even though they don't really use the service. So that's very convenient for the person offering a service, but not very convenient for the end user, because, you know, they would like to pay, you know, in the background whenever they use the service, a metered service. That's why metered phones also really took off at some point with prepaid phones, no real tie-in, nothing. So sort of the prepaid model we wanted to bring to the internet, against a quite big resistance from publishers, from the people that hold the contents. Independent publishers get it, and they don't have the critical mass and audience to build a subscriber base, or not all of them at least. And so there it was easy to kind of sell the product, but the volumes really didn't cover that's you know, what we needed to run a company with like 10, 15 people at the time. So that was a big challenge, that the market in a way, isn't ready for it, or you know, user acceptance was also okay. People that used it for the first time, they were like, okay, this is pretty simple. I can imagine doing that. I don't really like paying for stuff, but if it's so simple and it's just like 2 or 3 cents per click or per article, you know, the idea was that we made it possible to have very, very small amounts that can be charged for content that you don't really feel. And ironically, so we did the math on your mobile data plan. When you download a website with all the ads that you don't want to see, you pay like 2 or 3 cents, right? So if you would pay, let's say 1 cent or 1.5 cents for the content and not see any ads, you would save money. So that's actually, you know, because you don't pay for the data that's being downloaded, and you get like sort of premium content, and it's a higher income even for the publisher, because, you know, if you don't click any advertisement, there's no income for the publisher, but there's a guaranteed income. So that was kind of the thinking. Okay, this makes total sense, and that's also how there's like in the HTTP protocol, the protocol behind the World Wide Web, there's a status code 402, which is payment required. That's kind of the thinking about that. That's payment goes down to a protocol level. That's sort of in the like a metering protocol, and it's all prepared. And I think that's also why Sir Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the World Wide Web, recently mentioned SatoshiPay favorably, that he likes that idea. Micropayments can really go a long way if they're implemented by the publishers. So this needs massive scale, right, to work as a company. And while that's not really there yet, we came up with another service that we recently launched called D-Transfer. And D-Transfer is this cross-border money payments, money transfer service for businesses that you also referred earlier to. And that's a new product, independent product, and it uses a very similar technology stack. However, instead of cents, we are talking about 10,000 or maybe 100,000 euros or dollars per transaction transferred in the same speed. And that's something we are building out right now, and where potentially 1 or 2 transactions per month can make up for all the revenue that we might make with 100 publishers that same month. It's just a different number scale, the scale effect. And also the size of the market is enormous. We're talking about 200 billion in fees every year alone globally paid for international money transfer. So that's where we focus on that market. And we build a product around that and have recently launched in closed alpha. And we're opening up sort of a closed beta service soon, and then at some point an open beta service.
Amazing. Love to hear also like what you did before SatoshiPay in terms of like your background, where you were born, or like how was your upbringing, how that sort of had an impact on your entrepreneurial journey. Like question here from Yep.
It did have a bit, yes. So I grew up in a country that doesn't exist anymore, namely East Germany, the GDR. So that was sort of assimilated by the Borg being West Germany, as it was seen by some people. I mean, so that was not really not much left of it, unfortunately. So that was kind of a disruptive moment as a child. You grow up, and then suddenly everything you know is being replaced by something else that is now the normal truth. And then before that, they told you in school and everywhere, okay, this is the truth, socialism is that, and here's the books and everything. And suddenly there's like an event that disrupts everything. And that's, in a way, it's traumatic for society, right? I mean, there is obviously there are downsides and upsides on both sides, and possibly more downsides in this free market economy. Yeah, this was traumatic. And so like kind of questioning things that are there, that are the status quo, became in a way normal for everyone that went through this, right? And so entrepreneurial, when I think even before I started coding, I was trading some stickers that I bought in Prague, because there was a scarcity in East Germany of everything, really. Everything kind of fancy and shiny wasn't really catered for. And so I bought like stickers with motorbikes or Western brands in Prague, which had more of an open market, or like a marketplace for that, and sold them in my home village and made a bit of profit from that. And then at some point, I cut the supply chain and I made the stickers myself and had a higher margin on these. I was 9 years old at the time or something. So, but the principles of like kind of trades and the kind of value generation and creating a product were very familiar with me then already. I also, printed T-shirts that weren't available, and kind of tried to fill little market gaps, and always, yeah, with this creative thing in mind. Then in '99, when I was 21, I started my first startup, which was we were operating internet surf terminals in German youth hostels. So we had about 20 locations all over Germany, where we placed machines that were fully automated. You threw in a coin, and they would open up a screen and then allow you to use the internet. This was before mobile data or mobile phones, really. And this was before internet cafes were a commonplace. So you had to, when you were traveling, go to a library or find an internet cafe that closes at 6 p.m. So bringing this to the consumer, to the youth hostel, for me also as an avid traveler at the time already, this was something that I wanted and that I wanted to see in the world. And already these machines, they were running open source software. They were Linux-based. And it was almost a decentralized network. And we did even some distributed computing in the idle time of these computers. There was these relatively powerful machines sitting in locations getting or consuming electricity anyway, because they were switched on. And we did some computing there. So in a way, we had our own little cluster of computing out there. And that was, yeah, when I was around 21, 22. And then the internet crash happened, and the internet crash sort of in 2000, 2001 took down everything with it that was sort of in that industry. And we were reliant on a second funding round, which didn't happen. So we had to close down Netzteil, as it was called back then, our company. And I was like, okay, I understand now the dynamics in the market, not the market, but how this works, how to start a company, get external investment and do that and kind of grow it. And then you have a product, bring to the market, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, that's boring. That's too easy. I want to do something else that's more challenging. So I went into the nonprofit world. I started traveling extensively, visited alternative gatherings, sort of eco activists, and also some hacker meetings. The globalization critics had a very hard time back then because it was not really an established resistance, or resistance is a strong word, established alternative. It wasn't really there yet. It was kind of struggling to get recognition, and also not just to be shut down, but to have a valuable or like a valid voice in that whole discourse. So it was a tough time. So data and keeping data secret and away from like let's say police brutality, these kind of things was an important thing. So I started a service that gave refuge to people that wanted to host content, that wanted to have secure email lists, that wanted to run a wiki, not on a let's say a commercial service. So this was the Ecobytes project. And Ecobytes, so ecology, and then bytes, everything IT connected. So we were running one of the first services in Germany or in Europe that was running on renewable energy, that our servers were running on renewable energy. This wasn't really a thing then. Green IT just started. This was around 2003, 2004. So we kind of pioneered that in some way as well. And now many data centers, especially in Germany, are green. It's sort of an accepted standard that that they get their electricity from water power from the Rhine, or even sometimes solar, or like a mix of that. So that's kind of a given now. But then it was not. So that was the field I worked in a lot. I hitchhiked a lot. I cycled a lot. I lived in squats. These kind of things. I had a real kind of off the grid lifestyle, but very much on the grid to some extent. And I worked with social capital a lot, or like social credit that I got. I wasn't really paid for many of the things that I did in my volunteering work, but building a name and a reputation gave me, let's say, accommodation in a wonderful place somewhere in Barcelona, like a squat. And sort of this, it's like a parallel value economy that I was living in. And that sometimes wants to be expressed, wanted to be expressed maybe in numbers, and that's where alternative currencies came in. I looked at things like the Brixton pound, which was a local currency in the UK, and other similar projects in Germany, and always found a bit that it was, like centralized from an IT perspective, not very interesting. From the conceptual approach, very, very interesting, and also the success. Brixton pound was quite a success, and kind of pioneered other similar projects, and then people got inspired by that. Yeah, so that's kind of the journey before SatoshiPay or before Bitcoin. And then, as I mentioned, and connect the story again, Bitcoin came along in 2011, and that was really when everything came together, and suddenly a global movement started around this.
Amazing. And like, what are you so excited about Bitcoin and the blockchain? Like, what is the thing that kind of resonates with you, or feel?
This permissionless innovation. It's getting more permissioned these days with all the regulation coming in and new laws. But that's why it branched out into like 1,000 different blockchains, where some of them are completely permissionless, and you can't pull the plug on them, you can't regulate them, you don't even know where the nodes are and how many, let's say, how much currency exists, and there's just a reaction to certain let's say flaws also that Bitcoin has maybe, or like let's say other focuses. They have other focuses. So it fascinates me that this Cambrian explosion that we're still in, right? That it grows in all different directions, and no one is really stopping anyone. If I want to build a sushi swap, I just do it. I built one of the biggest exchanges in the world, and it becomes hugely successful within days, essentially. And that is just something that they don't have in any other industry these days, or any other community, let's say. And you can just be a nickname or even a pseudonym and create these whale-like entities that are absolutely huge and moving a lot of value and faster than anyone really can understand. So that's really the fascination. And Bitcoin started all that. So I started when there was just Bitcoin, just one blockchain. But then soon after, small forks or soft forks or software forks came from that Litecoin, one of the first one, Namecoin. And I was like, okay, this is really fascinating. We're transferring the model of open source software, or even like, let's say, wiki editing to money, or to like financial networks. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. And then bringing that together with decentralized networks that are unstoppable sometimes. How can anyone not be fascinated about that, right? So it's the typical rabbit hole that you fall in, and then even like the economic elements that I don't even mention of Bitcoin. You know, this fixed money supply, or more or less fixed, or like yeah, sort of emulating the digging of gold. You know, that mining that's has a fixed money supply, and the deflation as maybe something that can be useful. And yeah, so that's even on top of that, the macroeconomic effects or macroeconomic properties of many of these networks. And there's just so much to discover. And unfortunately, not unfortunately, but I have chosen to have sort of a tunnel vision on SatoshiPay and D-transfer these days. So I can't look left and right too much. But even there, we pull into these projects sometimes some of these technologies, including DeFi. In the future, we have some DeFi ideas for D-transfer. And yeah, I mean, it's just one of the most exciting things to be involved in our times, I think.
Amazing. How do you see Unit as being a disruptor as well? And what are you most excited about 2021?
What was the first part of the question?
How do you see Unit as being a disruptor?
And then 2020 or 21?
And what are you most excited about 2021?
So Unit, I must admit, I don't know enough about yet, but I think it's first and foremost the community of people also that makes every project, and also the openness that I've seen in the few conversations that I had, and what I've listened to, or what I saw in the Telegram groups. It's just a very open discourse with like open mind and open ideas. It doesn't seem to be any maximalism towards any certain technology or any flavor of a technology. So that is, really, that speaks to me a lot. That's what I think is fascinating. And then what comes out of that, it's kind of, everything is in the flow, and I like this flow approach. And so I always compare karate with Aikido. So you have karate where you block things, like you stop with blunt force, other force. And in Aikido, you take the movement of someone else and divert it and dance with it. So, and I think, Unit is more of a dance than as a blocker. Like that's what I was sort of, one of the challenges also was to realize that Bitcoin has become, or was at some point, a real tough fight between fundamentalists in some way. And I was like, oh, okay. But the system found a solution, right? So it just, okay, you fundamentalists can stay there, do your thing, and it might be for the good that you hold up the Holy Grail, or not the Holy Grail, that you hold up these values, but we need room for experimentation, and we used other networks for that. So I think that was a perfect example of how this evolutionary approach totally was a value. And yeah, so I see Unit and the connected projects to that very much as part of that. Also, I found out that there was, the Bali connection is very, very interesting to me on a personal level. I love Bali. It's the favorite place in the world for me. Not even one of them. I want to go there, and I will go there very soon. And I have spent a lot of time there. I have friends there. So I'm very excited to reconnect with that, and kind of also tie that into a physical space, right? As I understand, there's a physical space growing, and that's very fascinating. So that kind of goes into the 2021 plans, a bit for me, personal plans. So definitely come to Bali and see that all in action, connects also the contacts I have on the island, and bring that all together. And for SatoshiPay and D-transfer, I think a lot of growth. So we're maturing our product, and we are sort of bringing it to new markets. We have to build certain financial corridors first, because we kind of build up infrastructure on an open ecosystem as opposed to sort of traditional banking rails. That's really the clue what we do here, and but also one of the biggest challenges, of course, because a lot of that doesn't exist yet. And I didn't mention our great partner, the Stellar Foundation, which runs the Stellar blockchain, and with Lumens behind it. They are a great helper here, and they have also supplied a network that's very useful for us in that sense, and that really connects a lot of our values. And yeah, we changed to Stellar in 2017 already from Bitcoin, just because Stellar has the focus of being a medium of cheap and fast transactions first and foremost, and really does that one thing very well. It has, let's say, it goes a few compromises in terms of censorship resistance and centralization, or let's say federal structure of the network. So Bitcoin is very, very censorship resistant. Some networks that have sort of mutual trust agreements between nodes, not so much, but they can be a lot more efficient when it comes to transaction value. So it's sort of a proof of stake approach versus a proof of work approach, right? And Stellar using the proof of stake for a long time already. Yeah, so to 2021, also when I look at proof of stake developments, I wish to see more and hybrid solutions of that in the world. Keyword obviously Ethereum 2.0 here. That's you know, the goodness of both worlds can come together and enable business cases. And for the world, obviously, that the new normal becomes even more normal, right? That we all kind of learned our lessons from that. Don't fall back into the exact same patterns of behavior and economic exchange, but sort of take something out of this. You know, fly less, do more online meetings, which was already a trend before, but I think this really gave this whole virtual presence that is in a way more sustainable for the planet, and a whole new stage, right? And everybody gets used to it. Even, you know, like parents' generations are getting used to Zoom calls and these kind of things, which wasn't really a thing before. Yeah, I think that's
amazing. What's your vision for 2030? And how does it look to today? A question from Yep.
The world, or mine, or all of this, me in the world?
The world generally.
30, 10 years on. I think we will have learned, and also the growing young generation will have made sure that the planet needs to be you know, protected more than we do it already and now, and not like in 10 years or 20 years. We need to act, and we need to change our behavior also. Not very much actually, just like look at different solutions for the things that we already do. So like, just be smart about things, just don't be stupid, and you know, use renewables instead of other things, or like properly renewable energies, and just yeah, be a lot smarter. I think we will have been forced to do that because of you know, rising natural disasters. Unfortunately, that seems to be the only thing that really makes people listen. But that will have happened. So we'll be in a sort of more green tech world in most parts. And maybe even like there will be new leaders emerging in terms of regions that sort of leapfrog the industrial old approach and go directly to renewables and build a, you know, decentralized energy grid and yeah, energy being a main focus in all this, and just don't get into the phase where they consume a lot of natural resources, but kind of you know, start from a higher level in terms of green standards. So that's an important thing. Economic freedom is under attack, but I think humankind will find a way, you know, as it has done now with decentralized currency networks, decentralized value networks, and stores of values, to work around that and to remain freedoms, so, or like keep freedoms. And yeah, so the total control of let's say economic transactions will hopefully never happen, but there will be very strong alternatives that you can't pull the plug on, and they will be very established, you know. Bitcoin will be at 1 million, obviously. That's my price prediction, because so many people will invest in Bitcoin, and then all the alts and everything that comes with it. Yeah, and hopefully less wars too, as a result of that, over resources or just petty conflicts, you know, over borders. Will have become a lot less, because people, you know, will also look into space more and see existence on Earth as a shared experience, not a, you know, something that needs to compete even within that very Earth that we have.
Amazing. And if you're in charge of like the world economy, what kind of steps or what would you do to get us there? Another question from you.
I would destroy my job, make sure that there's no one person or no one elite in charge of the economic development. So I think that would be the biggest step, make myself obsolete.
Amazing. And
maybe,
sorry.
Go ahead.
No, please answer too.
But your question was probably a different one. Like the biggest changes that I would maybe want to see implemented in the world. Equality, obviously, just reverse the trend of concentration of wealth and well-being, and you know, just spread it out more evenly again. So that's, you know, that would be my main focus of activity. And I think I would start with a decentralized approach to it, obviously, including decentralizing my own role in this.
Amazing. And in terms of like the timeline, in terms of getting to this future, where do you think we are? Or the progress? Like if that was 100%, like where do you think we are?
In the reversal, we're very much at the beginning, I would say. Creating more equality, unfortunately, also I think all the indicators at the moment, you know, give a sign that we're not reversing, or we're not creating more equality. We're doing the opposite. So very much at the beginning, unfortunately, when it comes to these big goals. When it comes to decentralized infrastructures, the progress bar has moved quite a lot in the last 5, 6, 7 years, and also the acceptance of those. And there I would give it maybe a 20% or 30%. I mean, the internet itself was, you know, a decentralization of many things, including knowledge, right? So before Wikipedia, there was, you know, these big books, or these big collection of books that were in a way the history, the Encyclopedia Britannica, or like the Brockhaus in Germany. That was your reference that you went to, and okay, what is truth, or how do you spell a certain word, you know, or what is the history of China, right? So look at these books, and then obviously you have the perspective of the people that authored these books, which was, you know, a small group often, and often not containing the opinions of the people that live on the ground in these regions, or, you know. So history obviously is written, and always from a perspective from a person that has, in a way, a certain narrative that they need to support, but to have a combined narrative. And you see these battles on Wikipedia, these edit battles, right? So that there's at least a discourse of how to present a certain part of history, culture, or economic activity. There's an open discussion about it. So in that sense, perspectives from all over the world have been included now in that. And now that comes to currency as well. So we don't have these big major leading currencies only. We have, you know, now at least one global currency that's out there, that's you know, being shaped by many players all over the world.
Amazing. And when did you fail, or like sort of challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome it, and what did you learn, like, in terms of your journey?
So there was obviously the failure of the first company that went down with the internet crash. So that was one thing where I learned, okay, sometimes maybe you have to be a bit quicker in taking opportunities, and maybe not saying no to things that seem crazy, because we had the offer of a lot of venture capital in the beginning of that company. When, you know, this was 99, 2000, when there was like billions being made on IPOs. So the ICOs of the time, but even bigger, like you know, multiply this by 10, right? So that was an IPO at the time. There was like the small teams that became billion dollar companies. So we got offered a lot of millions, but we were like, what, 20 at the time, 21. We were simply afraid. We didn't understand the dynamics. Like if someone gives us like 5 or 10 millions at that age, you know, what happens then if we sort of waste it on something? So we said no to that, and sort of did a more milestone approach, and sort of organic growth we attempted, which didn't work in the end. And maybe a more initial capital in the beginning would have helped us. to have more of a runway to develop our product to a profitable stage, right? So we thought, okay, this boom will last forever. So like recognizing that one is in a bubble is something I learned, and that came in handy several times after, especially in the crypto world. So that's a learning, and then use these bubbles or these let's call it positively peaks of high attention on a certain subject, and economic attention also. So to use them and recognize them and use them, that was one of the big learnings, and using them by sort of securing some of that craziness and diversify it into something that's not as crazy and not as volatile. Let's say, get some capital or convert a bit into property or invest it otherwise, and kind of diversify more also your streams of attention. And so that was a big learning. Then also with our first product, the micropayments product for SatoshiPay, to learn, okay, if the market isn't really ready ready yet, or not demanding it yet, don't wait it out, react quicker, kind of be more agile, and don't be afraid to pivot, obviously, towards something else or do a partial pivot. And I think in the next iteration, I would do that earlier. I would, like put in 2 horses into a race earlier, and then maybe go on the winning horse at an earlier time. This saves a lot of capital, I would say, and also saves like the energy that goes into it, and probably is a better use of human attention as well, and resources, which then translates again to natural resources at some point.
We have a question here. Are we in a bubble right now, and how would you be able to tell if one is?
Timescale wise, we're running up to a bubble, I would say. Again, let's say crypto bubble, right? I think the question is about crypto and let's say crypto market prices. So when you look at price graphs, or do the usual oracle, and you look at the crystal ball, you see that we're at a high level and we're relatively stable there. The last time we were at this high level in 2017, this lasted for 2 hours and then it crashed, right? And this hasn't happened. So that's an indicator that there's more, let's say, solid capital resources behind this that are not so fragile. And this could be an indicator that this will go on for a bit, and then maybe a disruptor in either way happens to create a bigger price move. So I think we don't see the vertical price charts yet. We see it on some coins where they jump up 70, 80% in a day, and that's obviously a small bubble in this ecosystem. In terms of the decentralized finance or crypto world or blockchain world, I think we're in a phase of adoption where it really big funds go in, companies actually use other parts of blockchain to solve a problem that they have in their businesses, and not just jump on it for the hype. It's moving from the marketing departments to the actual product departments. So that's what we've seen in collaborations we do, and also conversations we have. We had a lot of conversations with marketing departments in 2017, and now we're talking to the people that actually build products and want to do something. So that's an indicator for us that something real is happening. And just the number of people getting into this space, and the number of exchanges and the volumes. And if you just look at volumes, I mean, they are stable, they're high, and it's not so much of a bubble. It's a solid growth right now, and the bubble will be a big bang, I suppose, again, where everybody just goes bonkers again at some point. I think that if history tells me anything, that's going to happen when suddenly you can go to an ATM and buy cryptocurrencies or something, stuff like that, or a first real central bank coin comes out, and just I think that there's more to come. There's also a bit of a few black swan scenarios, obviously, out there. If you have like one of the biggest unregulated stablecoins, operating in a way that is maybe threatening the people that issue that currency, or that issue that currency. I'm talking about the US dollar here, obviously. If that gets challenged in a strong way, that could create huge ripples. But however, then you have capital tied in there. That capital will need to move somewhere within the crypto space. People that have now stable coins, they will not say, okay, I'm going to use banks again. Right? Fine, they shut down my stable coin. I'm going to use banks again. That's not going to happen. So it's going to make the infrastructure or the ecosystem more resistant to sort of not attacks, but these growth pains.
Amazing. We have 3 more minutes left. How do you look at or evaluate the potential behind a blockchain or crypto project? And what's the difference between success and failure in this market?
It depends on your use case. So we have a very narrow use case for the blockchains that we looked at. So I can maybe just tell about how we selected Stellar out of other blockchains at the time. And this decision is already 4 or 5, well, let's say 3 or 4 years ago. So we looked at how scalable is it in terms of number of transactions? What is the transaction cost? What happens if the network has suddenly 100 times the transactions in its ledger? How big will the nodes be? Just what's the footprint of individual nodes? What's the ecosystem behind it? Is it the governance? Is there a foundation that's has like a transparent structure behind it, or is it a few people that have nicknames, right, and then might disappear, and do a marketing talk all the time? So founder teams or founding infrastructure, governance, throughput, scalability, and then also traction, of course. I mean, how many numbers of transactions are there? How much capital is tied into that? Actual capital, so not just made up coins, for example. So those are the very basic things. And then looking, okay, is there smart contract support? Do we need smart contract for our use case, for example, or what kind of elements of a smart contract do we need? Is that has that been hacked in the past? Is it prone to errors? Is it a good approach? That's why we decided against existing smart contract platforms in the past, because we saw there was still a lot of alpha behavior, not really production ready, we thought. And we saw Stellar focused on this very production ready use case that was already in 2017, could in theory transport 1,500 transactions per second, and with minimal costs. So that's what we looked at. And the failure of a blockchain would be, I think, big hacks. That would be a testament of, maybe not the best security approach of a chain. Then, number of nodes going down or being subsidized by the entity behind it, maybe, or too heavily subsidized by that. If the economic model, maybe as well, if you have too high interest rates or too much of an inflation in there, that would be an issue for us as well, or like a red flag. It really depends on the use case. So each company or each project that wants to decide on an approach needs to find their own measures, but those were ours.
Amazing. And I guess last question, since we've kind of run out of time here. What was your happiest moment with SatoshiPay? A really nice question from Sasha.
Well, it's happiest moment. Well, there was a moment, there were 2 moments. So there was the initial launch of the micropayment model, which was done in Bali. I was sitting at a nice pool at the Mansion. I don't know if you know, it has this, absurdly luxurious place, which is very affordable. And we pressed a button, and then some servers were deployed. And the service was live. And some initial test users came in, and this was like, okay, we have, so it's in the world, right? So it's now happening. And there was also, I think, a news release at the time. That was great. There was a very small step. And then there was a moment where actual users came in, where people started using the service that we didn't know, and publishers signed up that we didn't know before. This self-service publishers signed up, put content online, and people started using it. And there was this moment, hey, this is actually useful for people. This is, doing something here. And seeing your creation out in the world like that was an, amazing moment in time. And then obviously, I mean, the obvious ones, big funding rounds, they make you happy in a way, but it's kind of a necessary thing anyway, right? If you don't get these funding rounds, then you don't really survive. But at least in the early days. So those were the moments. Those are the things that come to mind right now. Yeah. But that recent highlight was the inception of the new service, DTransfer. We came up with a great name that we liked, that other people liked, and the concept behind it. So we did this sort of soul search. What can we do with our technology? What are good markets? And then it all came kind of together, where we found a great market. We found initial customers. We found that our network can do this, and we get great support again from the foundation. And it all fell together, and it resulted in this launch just a few months ago. And that was also quite liberating, and it gave us a good, strong new direction.
Well, thank you so much for your time and insight and advice and sharing your perspective, Meinhard. And yeah, looking forward to see you soon in Bali. And yeah,
you will. And thank you for having me, and thank you for the invitation. Thanks. Bye-bye.